I know what you're thinking. How have I managed to record so many videos recently? It's an overwhelming amount of content, and I am not eating enough lunches throughout the day to be able to watch all of it. Well, you're welcome. That's all I have to say. You're welcome. I've been working very hard recently, incredibly diligently. No, the honest truth was I was traveling and just took a few days while I was off in the woods, and then had a big thing that I had to film yesterday that ended at the Club World Cup. So that's what I want to talk about, right? We ended up going to a Club World Cup match last night. It was Palmeiras against Porto, which was a humdinger of a 0-0. And I did get my first up-close experience of kind of what FIFA is trying to do. And I feel like it helps, right? This is on the ground. This is boots on the ground research shit right here. It helps me form more accurate nonsense opinions to give you on this sort of thing. I think there is one group of people that is really going to love the Club World Cup. One group of people. Now, it feels weird. It feels kind of fake. Even as somebody that went to it, as somebody that watched a match with it, it's hard to tell if that feeling is just because it's new or because it's always going to be weird and fake. Now, the most important thing is off the top, the FIFA Club World Cup is a money grab. It is FIFA's attempt to try to co-opt the club side of the game to make itself money because it's jealous of the Champions League. That's the only reason FIFA is doing it. Any other reason they tell you is fucking bullshit, right? That's why they're doing it. And all that we are left to do is fans of the game is decide whether we like it or not on its own merits, because FIFA's going to do what makes it the most money. You know, whether they feel like immigrants or not, or whatever Gianni Infantino's talking about today. And we're just left to decide whether we want to enjoy something or not, right? Because the expansion of the World Cup to 48 teams is a money and power grab for FIFA, but I like it. I like it. There are a lot more nations trying to qualify than there were when they expanded to 32 teams. I think 48 is probably a number that you could stick at and would be fun. I hope they never go to 64 because we're honestly running out of nations. Basically, every nation's in World Cup qualifying at this point. You're not going to be adding a lot more teams, and the expansion to 64 would be dumb. I am sure at some point in my lifetime they will do that, right? But 48, I like it. Club World Cup, jury is obviously still out. The biggest issue being, I feel like some of these players don't want to be here. But in the match that I watched, Palmeiras-Porto, there was a good amount of effort. And I think that was largely because of the one subset of people that I think are really going to enjoy this tournament. South Americans. South Americans are really going to enjoy this tournament. Now, people from Africa, people from Asia, probably not really going to give a shit. Your team's got no chance of winning, right? CONCACAF is in the same boat here. Right, but then you got to keep in mind that there are Mexican teams, and those teams are going to travel super well, particularly in the United States. So that's going to be a really distorting figure. But CONCACAF, Africa, Asia, you want to make it because you get a big paycheck. And in this era of financial fair play, then making it is this good thing. And then maybe you can take one scalp. But you're basically like Australia showing up at the World Cup. You're a vibes pick. Maybe you can vibe your way to the round of 16 by stunning Denmark, but generally speaking, you're there for Tim Cahill and that one crazy goal he's going to score. Just the vibes, right? You got no chance. Then you have Auckland, right, or whoever ends up coming out of New Zealand for Oceania, right? You have whichever team that is, and they're going to show up and get murdered. It's like Tahiti going to the Confed Cup back in the day. Right, I don't even know what it does for them. It gives them money and time off, but apparently with all of $1 billion FIFA spending, they can't pay or help pay Auckland City's players' wages because apparently a few of those guys that are on the team couldn't even take the time off work to go play at the Club World Cup. I feel like FIFA could have spotted a few $1,000s to make sure that Auckland City could at least get a full-strength team so that they could lose 8-0 instead of 10-0 against Bayern Munich. That seems like a pretty good move. But no, they'd rather, I don't know what else they're spending the money on. Right? Individual player walkouts or whatever. We're going to get to that sort of stuff later. But South America, this is like the tournament that was designed for them. For all of the South American clubs that are going to end up in it. Because South American football is very good. I don't know if you've noticed that, right? And I don't mean to come off with an American take here, but it is. Particularly the Brazilian league plays at a very high level. Right, you see guys transition from a pretty high level in the European game to playing in the Brazilian league, and it's not like they show up there and start dominating right away. There is a transition period. There is a level of competition that they have to deal with. And I saw that in Palmeiras against Porto. Palmeiras is the better team, right? There's really only one cut, in my opinion, of European teams that are better than the best teams you're going to get in South America. That would be your PSGs, your Real Madrids, your Liverpools, right? The teams that are making the knockouts of the Champions League are going to be better than the South American teams. But your Portos, your Champions League stage type team, that maybe can get to the playoff, but not the round of 16, at least what Porto is right now. Palmeiras is going to hope that they can win. And so this whole tournament, this whole Club World Cup is going to be a big deal in one continent. It's going to be a big deal in South America because it's their chance to prove what I'm talking about. It's their chance to go out there and go nuts and root for their team and be able to play against European giants and like actually see if they can do it. Not to mention, South America's got a shitload of people in it. And unlike Europe, they're concentrated in a lot fewer countries, right? And the crowd at the match that I went to was evidence of this working theory. It was 95% Palmeiras fans. Porto's got a great fan base. I'm not out here trying to be like, well, Porto's fans suck, right? But they don't care. The Club World Cup is not something that Porto fans have circled on their calendar. They're not going to fly to New York to go watch them play against Palmeiras. Now, if you're Palmeiras, not only are there a lot more people, not only are you in the right side of the Atlantic Ocean, not only are there a lot of Brazilians in New York to begin with, but you're playing against Porto. You're playing against a big European team, big brand name, right? Maybe not the biggest brand name coming out of Europe for this tournament. No shame when you have your Real Madrids, your PSGs in this thing in the first place, but a big European name. And they traveled. Because even though there were a lot of Brazilians, I was on the train going to the match, surrounded by Palmeiras fans. A lot of them talking about how they'd flown to New York just for this match. I think every single one of the South American teams, at least the majority of them, are going to have this kind of support throughout the entire tournament. Just this massive wall of sound. The South American teams and the Mexican teams, I would imagine, I think they're playing in LA and stuff. They're going to be playing home games for this entire tournament. And some of these clubs that are the biggest clubs in the world, like your Real Madrids, are going to be a kind of a fan disadvantage. And that makes this tournament incredibly weird, right? Because if you put Palmeiras against Real Madrid right now, I think the Palmeiras fans would drown out the stadium, right? I think that's just the way that this tournament's going to go because one continent cares. I was impressed. I was impressed by the atmosphere that Palmeiras brought. That's not the only match I'm going to go to. I'm going to, well, the match that I think is going to be the least attended match, and I'm going to see if anybody traveled in for it. And, you know, you're going to be making a whole video about it. I think Zealand's going to be making a video about it too, but obviously we're different people, so I don't know how that's going to go. But I did get a full Club World Cup experience. And even though I said kind of earlier at the start of this video that it provided some sort of illumination, it really didn't. I got to go with a couple of other creators. Ellis from Waydays was there. B. Ford Lancer was there. Guys that I'm friends with. And we were talking about, well, it's just a little strange, isn't it? Especially the fact that it's in June. And some of those guys on the field definitely would rather be on vacation than be playing in MetLife Stadium in New Jersey in 60 degrees and raining in June. Fahrenheit, by the way, you can do the conversion yourself. Look at the time. As for the American stuff, that is, I think, always a little overblown. I mean, America is very easy to hate on, and we're not doing a great job of making that any better for ourselves recently, and I'm fully aware of that. But I just saw a couple of tweets like the absolute wokest thing about the Club World Cup is the players coming out of the tunnel individually, and this did happen, and it was a little weird. I watched this happen. The players came out of the tunnel one at a time. They were announced individually, and then they line up on the field. This is something that happens in certain American sports, NFL, NBA. Not all American sports. Certain American sports do this, and what I don't understand is why people are so mad at this. I feel like, and this is going to happen with the World Cup next year as well. I mean, obviously, there's going to be certain things that FIFA does at the World Cup that America's just going to get blamed for. And don't get me wrong, a lot of shit you can blame us for. A lot. But this is FIFA. I think America ends up holding the water as like the scapegoat for decisions that FIFA makes to try to change up and make the game experience better. I don't really understand why the players walking out individually and having their names announced is so traumatically different than the players walking out together and having their names announced. I think in some ways it helps you kind of identify who each player is. You can get like an ovation for each individual player. And for Palmeiras, the guy that Chelsea has signed, Estevao, got a huge ovation when his name was announced and he walked out. But either way, it's not that big of a deal. It's just FIFA decides to do this sort of stuff sometimes and decides to drift towards America. You know what? I'm going to say something. America, with its billion flaws, we have a better game day experience. I've been to matches in both places. I've been to a significant number at this point. And when I say both places, I'm talking about mainly Europe. I do not have a lot of experience going to matches in South America. So that's different, or in Asia, to be perfectly honest, or in Africa. So I'm talking about Europe and the U.S. The match day experience in the U.S. is better. It is. Like the game day experience in different sports is better in the U.S. than it is in Europe. Bayern was better than in England. In England, it's the same as the food. I don't know what the fuck they're doing. They just like hate fun. And I realize a lot of people that watch this video are in the same category, right? You're from England. I can see the analytics. Why? Why do you hate fun? It doesn't ruin the game if the players walk out individually. Maybe you play a cool song while they're doing it. Although that's probably going to take another 100 years to invent. You know, like you go to a match in England and they're almost ashamed of the scoreboard. They've got it like up in the corner, you know, like the video board. They don't show you anything. Nothing happens. There's no little game to like entertain you at halftime, or at least not for you. You know. I mean, obviously some of that is brain rot, right? But you have the whole classic. If you've watched a movie in America, they have something goes in the hat and the hats shuffle around, and I don't know. Somebody goes on the field and tries to kick the ball in the back of the net. You see this sort of stuff in South America, too. I've seen it in Mexico. They bring out like an obstacle course and have 3 people try to go through it at halftime. But if somebody walks out onto the field in England, they'd probably invent a shotgun just to like shoot the person that was on the field at halftime because they're disrespecting the grass. I don't know. FIFA's got a lot of problems. But with this, they're just trying something. They're just trying. There's going to be so much of these conversations in the World Cup next year, I'm sure, right? But the United States, for all of its flaws, knows how to keep a group of people entertained for 3 hours during an NFL game where there's a lot more stoppages, right? The gameplay experience, particularly in the British Isles, is diabolically poor, almost like intentionally poor. And that has created this idea that if it's anything other than like you just hearing the smack of the ball and the yell of the players, or some drunk fat English guy singing about something to skip to, to the rhythm of Skip to My Lou, which, like, we got our own singing fat people. So I didn't mean to disrespect the Greg's sausage rolls because, my God, I love a Greg's sausage roll. Also, you don't really stand a chance. I've been to those Chippies. They're frying pizza. They're frying everything. There's not a lot of salads in those Chippies. You know what I'm saying? I am so far from the point I'm about to get a nosebleed, but I think you understand generally what I'm saying. This is not the last time we're going to be in the trenches having a conversation about whose fault it is that some minor change has been made to the match day experience. Now, once you start bringing out halftime shows that like elongate the game, you can blame us. That will happen at the World Cup. I am sure of it. But this, just a bit of fun. And it is kind of funny to watch, players for Porto and Palmeiras who don't really know how this is supposed to work just start walking before they start announcing their name. I've enjoyed that. But the Club World Cup, it's just weird. I don't know, maybe by the end of it, it'll be cool. Because you'll boil it down to the teams that really care and can compete.